It was a short trading week this week with Easter and Good Friday with the markets being closed, but a lot has been going on. Let's talk about it. Good evening, my fellow Riz Elite members and all of our subscribers here on YouTube. Welcome to our weekly market recap webinar. My name is Chris. I'm part of Riz International, and we are a group of traders who are looking to not only increase our prowess in trading and learn how to do it better, but to also help each other along the way. That's what Riz Elite is all about, and if you're not a member of Riz Elite, I highly recommend you get on the wait list. That link should be down in the description. And of course, if you're down there and you're following us on YouTube, make sure you slam that like and subscribe button. Join the channel so at least you can get these market recap webinars. So let's see what's been going on. So we had a massive rally last week going into this week, and honestly, there really wasn't much going on. It was pretty much a week, of nothing. For the most part. There really wasn't much going on. The only thing that really happened was we had unemployment numbers come in slightly higher than expected. So we'll have to see how that affects the market on Monday. But right now, we're just kind of trading sideways. You know, we went up a little bit on Monday. We came down Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday was a slightly up day, but really no major movement. Though we do seem to be in this channel right now. So this slightly grinding up channel. We'll have to see if this holds, but you know, we could possibly see the market go either direction. Riz was calling for 4,000 possibly later next week. We'll have to see if that's a possibility, and there are some big catalysts that are coming up this week that may actually push the market in that direction. But honestly, really this week was a whole lot of nothing. Really not much going on, no real major catalysts, but there were a few that we'll talk about here in a minute. Let's take a look at the breakdown here of the S&P 500 and see what is pushing the market right now. And honestly, it is communications and tech. These are the two highest performing sectors in the S&P 500 right now that we are monitoring, both over 20% up on the year. That is just insane, especially how bad of a year tech had last year, making a massive rebound since January 1st. And then, of course, we've got consumer discretionary here also outperforming, but what's really propping up the market is communications and tech right now. Those are the two sectors that are really pushing the S&P 500 up, and you know, there's been a lot of money flowing into that, and we've seen more risk on activity. And when you see that, that's usually the sectors you see it in, especially tech. Tech is traditionally more of a growth type stock, and when we go risk off, well, that's where big money starts putting their cash, and we're seeing that with this massive run up here on tech over the last week or so. S&P 500 is up 6% in a year, almost 6.5%. And everything else is really kind of, dwaddling along, for lack of a better term. You know, we've got consumer staples, energy, real estate, all technically above the zero line, but not by much, 1% or less. Utilities, healthcare underperforming, and financials still suffering from the bank failures that we had earlier this year. There really is a lack of confidence in that right now, though it seems as though the Fed has stopped things from going south any further. We'll have to wait and see with more rate hikes coming up more than likely in the future, as Powell had indicated in his discussion. Even though the market thinks that we will have rate cuts and a soft landing by the end of the year, I throw BS. That's all I'm going to say on that. I talked about that more last week, and if you missed that, make sure you watch last week's webinar as well. Let's take a look here at the asset classes. I told you there was a little bit of a catalyst going on, and that was in oil. Got a major announcement from OPEC Plus, that they were going to be cutting about 1 million barrels per day. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the Saudis who mentioned that. So we saw a very sharp rise here in oil going into the end of the week, closing. Let's see, where did we close on Friday? Looks like right around 80-70 per barrel. So really big run up here back into this channel that we had been seeing before. We'll have to see if she stays in there. It looks like we kind of flattened off on Thursday as well. So kind of a big run up in oil here, and that's why. And why I think the financial crisis isn't over yet with the banks is because people are still running to gold, and we have cracked 2,000. We were very close last week. We're just kind of hovering around here in the 1960s, 1970s, and then boom, this week we got the push. People are pushing into precious metals because they're concerned about their their assets. Gold, of course, is not a place to make money, but it is a way to preserve the money that you have, and people definitely flocking to gold, pushing the money up, the price up rather, over $2,000 an ounce, which is pretty substantial. Now, we've been up here one time before, back in March of 82, or of 22 rather, 82, that was a nice slip of the tongue. So yeah, back in March of 22, we were this high before, and actually a little bit higher. Looks like we peaked out at 2050. So let's just go ahead and put that in here, because that is going to be something that they are going to be looking at. Let's stick it right about there, 2050, close enough. And let's make it red. That'll be a lot easier to see. There we go. Beautiful. So, gold making a very strong push this week, and we'll have to see if there's anything else that goes on this week in the financial sector, or things going on overseas that may push gold higher, if there's more fear and less risk taking, which right now there seems to be less fear, lots of risk taking, but people still pushing into gold. So it is a little bit confusing at the moment, but we are seeing a very nice run up on gold here so far, so we'll definitely be watching that, but no positions on oil or gold at this time. Taking a look here at the bond yields after the financial bank breakdown, we've just kind of been grinding up and down on the yields. Everything for the most part is still pretty much inverted. Of course, the 10 and the 30 have been inverted for quite some time, but it's the 2-year bonds that are outperforming everybody at this point. Let's see here. It looks like we closed the week on the 2-year Treasury yields just below 4%. On that, 30-year Treasuries is 3.6, and the 10 years at 3.4. So still inverted for the most part. So obviously the shorter-term Treasury T-bills are doing a bit better as far as the bonds market is concerned. And the dollar continues to slide a little bit, but a little consolidation here, going into the end of the week, but still in a pretty solid downtrend. Of course, there's a lot of things weighing on that. From what I understand, there was discussions between the Saudis and the Chinese about doing oil deals in yuan instead of dollars, and that of course will weaken the dollar somewhat going into that. As there's more talk about the BRICS, currency standards and things like that. We'll have to see if anything really solid materializes out of that, but a lot of concern at this point with people moving away from the dollar, and we see that with the weakening here of the US dollar index. Now, I want to take a look at some of the big indicators this week, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar that we had some big indicators this week, and holy smokes, look at Wednesday on the 12th. We've got the big ones. We've got the inflation rate metrics being announced. We've got inflation rate month on month, core inflation year on year, and inflation rate year on year. All of these are going to be massive numbers. And then, of course, the minutes coming out at 1 p.m. Whenever the Fed starts talking, the market starts jumping. And so that is a big one as well. Now, Thursday, PPI, the producer price index, month-on-month reporting will be also another one. And then Friday, not too much going on. Retail sales is a good indicator of, how well, raising interest rates has done to, kind of curb the market, curb people spending money. We'll have to see on that, but I don't think we're going to have anything fantastic. Looks like they're forecasting a bigger drop in there, an increase in PPI, and looks like they're thinking that core inflation is going to stay the same. I'm throwing the BS flag on that one, guys. I'm just going to put it out right here. You all can tell me I was wrong Wednesday. Feel free to leave your comments down below and tell me how wrong I am. But yeah, I don't believe core inflation rate year on year is going to remain static. That seems somewhat of an impossibility to me, especially with everything that has been going on as of late. That wraps up our normal recap. I want to go ahead and let our members go ahead and post their questions. If you guys want to ask any questions, you want me to take a look at anything in the market. But yeah, it was really kind of a nothing burger this week. Really not much going on as far as movement in the S&P 500, really just kind of sideways movement. And obviously this is a very difficult market to trade with these massive whipsaws that we've had, not recently, but look at Friday. Friday was a huge run up before, and then this week just nothing. So A little bit of enthusiasm curbing here. We'll have to see if that continues, but we will note that we are above all of the moving averages at this point. So that bodes well for a continued move up, but there are so many catalysts coming up this week, especially the inflation rate announcement. That will be huge. Expect Riz to be watching that very closely. And then, of course, the minutes coming out. Like I said, whenever the Fed opens their mouth, the market likes to start jumping. It gets wild. If you've watched the shorter time frames during those minutes, it can get a little crazy. Okay, Sankey wants me to take a look at Google as from a technical point of view. Will it go up or down in the short term? Well, that is the question that everybody wants to know, isn't it? Okay, so let's see here. Well, I'll say that we're kind of running into a little bit of overhead resistance here at this point. We had a nice little inflection point here just about a month ago, it looks like. Let's put that back to yellow. There we go. So yeah, right here in February, so about 2 months ago, we kind of gapped up to this area, we pushed up to it, and then we rejected off of it twice, and we've rejected off of it again. So it'll really kind of depend on how the market goes on Monday, whether Google is going to continue its climb upwards, or if we'll start to see a little bit of sideways action here after this big day on Friday. But a lot of these tech stocks are getting pushed up. Of course, Google has their own AI that they're working on, so that will be something to keep an eye on. But we need to defeat this 109 area, honestly. We need to push over that and get a nice bullish push over that. If that happens, I think, yes, Google can continue to run. We are approaching overbought here, so that's something to be very careful of. And we've got earnings coming up at the end of, or about middle of the month on the 25th of April. So also something to keep an eye on. Of course, Google, a fantastic company, one of Riz's favorites to trade as of late. So that has been really good. But yeah, we've got this overhead resistance here that I'm a little concerned about. So I would be careful of that. If we get a nice push over 109, I think, yes, Google can continue to run. However, if it doesn't, we could just kind of get stuck between these two areas here, between like 104 and 109. That could be an issue if we can't get through that. So I mean, no one knows for certain whether it will go up or down in the short term. I would love to know, because if that were the case, I would be a freaking millionaire by now if I knew, how everything would move in the short term. But we definitely have a couple things going on. And of course, the inflation announcement on Wednesday will be a huge mover. No matter the technicals, something like that will move the market and will move everything else with it. So the herd will kind of determine the direction off of the inflation rate numbers, and then the FOMC minutes, so the Fed minutes, whenever they talk, the market runs. And sometimes it runs the direction we don't want. All right, Jeffrey says, how about Apple? I've been watching it with all the insider selling that's been in the news lately. Yes, that was something that I believe it was Yas in our, Jess had posted in our Discord, a great thing that we have going on with all of that. It was either Jess or Raul. I can't remember who posted it. But yeah, apparently there's been a lot of insider selling of Apple stock. So that is something to keep an eye on. But it seems to be holding up at this point. So obviously we are a bit extended here. And by that, I mean we're pretty extended from the moving averages. You can see there's a big gap here between the moving averages, but they are starting to curl upwards, especially the shorter term. If I'm not mistaken, that's the 50. Yep, the 50 moving average, which is the teal line here, is starting to push up. We've pushed over the 100 and the 200 on the 50. So that's a very nice bullish move here. And we've been running up on Apple again. I think a lot of tech stocks are running up right now. And I don't know if that insider selling is something to be concerned of. It could be the insiders buying the dip and then, taking profits. That is one thing. We are approaching overbought. Looks like we we just touched it here on the 3rd. And then we had a little bit of a rejection and a recovery on Thursday. So, if Apple can hold on here, so there's 3 things that can happen, right? So, and again, all of these are dependent on the market just kind of being blah, for lack of a better term, and just kind of not knowing what it's going to do. So when you have a big move up like this, if you can get some period of consolidation kind of like this, and it can hold these levels, typically what can happen is you can get a push higher. Now, of course, that's not a guarantee, but all things being equal, if we can hold these levels, that's definitely a good thing. Now, what we could see on Mondays, we could see kind of a return to the moving averages and just kind of holding there before we start grinding back up again. That's another possibility. And then, of course, the third possibility is it just does this. So obviously, of course, if you're in Apple, you want option number 3. But when we see these large moves up like this, that's usually what happens is you kind of hit this peak, you hit overbought, and then you just kind of chill for a little bit. So you do the sideways consolidation a little bit, and then it will kind of pick a direction. And again, the market can push it any way it wants. Remember that Apple holds the largest part of the S&P 500. It is the, the top dog of the S&P 500. So as the S&P goes, Apple goes as well. So if we get a big run up in the S&P, Apple is going to get a big run up. Look at what we had on Friday last week when the market was, running like crazy. So you'll notice that if you look at the last 5 trading days, they're almost exactly the same on Apple as it is on SPX. I mean, it's almost a carbon copy of each other. So that kind of tells you how closely related the two indices are, or rather the S&P 500 index and Apple, for how much, that it holds, how much weight it holds in the S&P 500. So that's something to be aware of. But yeah, the insider trading is a little concerning for me, but obviously it doesn't seem to be affecting the stock price too much. But definitely something going on, especially here on Wednesday. A nice tail there, but still, even though we gapped down on Monday, or excuse me, on Thursday, we definitely had a lot of buying going on there. So yeah, it's an interesting place. I don't know if I would be a buyer at Apple at these levels. Again, I would like to see it kind of come back down the moving averages, and that might be a better place to get in, to get a ride back up. But yeah, an interesting one here with Apple for sure. How about Domino's? I'm not in the mood for pizza, but if we want to take a look at the stock, I suppose we could do that. So a lot of people buying the dip here on the pizza. I mean, obviously buying pizza on the dip is always a good thing. Looks like earnings were pretty decent, though they did miss on their revenue, which is a little unfortunate. Gosh, they only made $1.39 billion as opposed to $1.43 billion. What a shame. What a shame. I got to tell you, just such a disappointment. But there was quite a gap down here. Domino's really running into the 50 here and having some problems getting over it after this very nice recovery. Honestly, the place to buy was probably down here around 310. But still, if we can get a nice push over the 50, then I think we have some more upward momentum potential. That is, quite a dip here. Let's take a look at the bigger picture. Let's dig it. Let's pull out here on Domino's because I'm interested. I don't really care for their pizza all that much, but their stock definitely likes to move, doesn't it? So, obviously we kind of ran up here. Looks like we peaked right as the market peaked in January of 22, and then we were just having a bunch of selling. And, we're just kind of trading sideways. But, yeah, nice run up here post-earnings beating, or, thrashing, for lack of a better term. Looks like we got earnings coming up again here in April 27th before open, so that's good to know. But yeah, really we're just kind of consolidating sideways. From a technical standpoint, it's not bad, but we've got a lot of stuff in the way. We do have some support down here, probably right around this area, right around this 323, 324 area. That seems to be an area it likes to hold. We've had several hits there, so that seems pretty relevant. Let me put that on the chart. Right about there. Yeah. Let's get it right on that tail, shall we? Yeah, so that looks pretty good there. Right around 323.25, let's call it that. So we definitely have some support below us if we decide to take this, but the 50 crashing down is really not helping anything, and obviously we've been running into that here lately, and we haven't been able to get over it. We kind of came over it, and then we sold back off. Now, again, of course, this is somewhat following the market, the way that the S&P 500 is behaving. But yeah, I'd like to see more of a push over the 50, and then I might be a little more excited for this. We aren't overbought yet, though we are getting closer. Let's see, probably right around 58 or so. So that's not too bad. But yeah, Domino's, interesting one here. But yeah, I think really the place to buy in was probably around 310, or even lower if you wanted to try and knife catch. But yeah, still a potential here. Still a potential trade. That's an interesting one. Jeffrey said a dirty word here. He said, can we take a look at PLTR? Plantair. This is one that I've lost money on. So and you can see where I was in and by my lines, and what Plantair has been absolutely getting wrecked. You know, you're a long-term bag holder. Well, I understand, but you may be holding for a while because we are not getting any movement. I'm hoping you're averaging down. If you really believe in it, this is the place to average down at, honestly. But man, I mean, if you're in already, yeah, then no point in letting it go unless you need to deploy capital somewhere else. But you know, the funny thing is, from a fundamental standpoint, this company is doing pretty well. From what I understand, they've gotten some government contracts, which have been pretty lucrative for the company. But we just have not seen that reflected in the stock price. And this is one that Riz doesn't want to trade anymore because he's tired of getting his what handed to him. But yeah, if I remember right, I think I was in somewhere in this area here, and I think I had to take a loss on it. But yeah, this one has just been getting hammered since 2022. My goodness, even before. We're starting getting wrecked on November of 21. And it just does not want to perk up. Even with decent earnings, we get a nice little spike and then it sells back off. So there is just a lot of selling pressure on this thing. A lot of people holding it down. Now, that could be a question, is it a potential for a short squeeze? And maybe it is. But I'm not going to tell Wall Street bets about it, and I'm sure you won't either. But this one, not something that they would trade anyway because it's a decent company, not some meme stock. But yeah, it's really unfortunate with Plantair. But yeah, I don't see it, but it's really having a hard time getting away from, even getting over 10 at this point. So, I mean, at this point, it's technically a penny stock. It is unfortunate because it's a pretty decent company with pretty decent fundamentals. So I don't hold out a lot of hope, but if we do get a short squeeze, it could be, yeah, it does defy all logic. I agree with you 100%, Jeff, and I don't understand why there's so much selling pressure on this thing. It makes no sense at all, but, sometimes things just don't make sense, and that's really all there is to it. So, I mean, I don't know what your average is. You don't have to tell us, but yeah, I mean, if you're a long-term bag holder and you believe in this, then it could be a good place to average down. But man, that's a really dangerous average down. I'll just tell you right now, it's incredibly dangerous because we could do nothing but hug these levels and then grind lower if there's such a push on this thing, such a short hold on it. Yeah, that's really unfortunate for this company. It really should be doing better than what it is. But something definitely to keep an eye on if you've got in it. I wouldn't take this personally if I'm just taking a position, but Jeff was saying he's been holding it for a while. So really frustrating. I can only imagine that this is a boat anchor on your account at this point. And so it may be one of those things, if you get a spike like this again post earnings, it may be something to just kind of take off and let it go. But if you really believe in it, it could be a place to average down, but I personally wouldn't do it on a position probably this deep in the red. It's really hard to justify putting more capital into it. So really unfortunate. It looks like we've had a bunch of earnings misses lately. So yeah, we're just having a tough time. They keep missing. Yeah, I hear you on that one, Jeff. It's just one of those things that doesn't make sense. You have, great fundamental companies that just have terrible stock prices and others that are, completely fundamentally garbage. And, they're running like $200. We've seen garbage stocks before on this channel, haven't we? Now, of course, GameStop, after all the memeage of, what was it? Yeah, 2021. Yeah. I have a buddy who's still holding this, by the way. So much for Diamond Hand, right? Yeah, it's one of those things you have, and you look at the fundamentals of, GameStop, and, Plantair is so much better, and yet their stock is 3 times more expensive. So it's one of those things, like you said, it defies logic. It makes no sense, but sadly, that's the market sometimes. Sometimes the good companies get absolutely wrecked, and, some that are pretty bad just keep on trucking, for lack of a better term. So we're coming up right on a half an hour. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Obviously, we've got some big ones coming this week, and it's right here on Wednesday. So make sure you're keeping an eye on the market on Wednesday. That's a big catalyst. So keep an eye on that. Right now, we're really trying to take things easy as the market really just kind of likes to chop around right now. We're being a little cautious with our trades, and we recommend that you do the same. But of course, I'm not giving you financial advice. And you need to make your own trades, and that's what we do in Riz Elite. So if you're not a member of Riz Elite, make sure you check out that link down in the description to get on the wait list, and we'll see you in the market on Monday.